From the editors of Cook's Illustrated magazine, it's America's Test Kitchen. With your host, Christopher Kimball. Featuring Test Kitchen chefs Julia Collin-Davison, Bridget Lancaster, Becky Hayes, with Adam Reed in the equipment corner and Jack Bishop in the tasting lab. Discover the secrets of America's foremost food testers and tasters today on America's Test Kitchen. Today on America's Test Kitchen, Bridget uncovers the secrets to authentic Peruvian roast chicken. Next, gadget guru Lisa reveals her top pick for vertical roasters. Then, Jack challenges Chris to a tasting of brown rice. Finally, Yvonne shows Chris how to make perfect black beans and rice at home. That's all right here on America's Test Kitchen. America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances. For over 50 years, Miracle-Gro products have helped home chefs grow fresh vegetables and herbs. Miracle-Gro soils and plant foods provide the essential nutrients plants need to grow bountiful produce. Gardening tips are available online at miraclegrow.com. By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. Chateau Saint Michel. Digital wine cellar and pairings can be found online. And by Kohler. Diamond Crystal Salt, the gourmet choice. Plum Amazins from Sunsweet.
Everybody knows three things about Peru. They know where potatoes came from Peru, of course. The now trendy grained quinoa also comes from Peru. And of course, the highest city in the world, Machu Picchu. And the fourth thing, of course, is I look really terrific in native Peruvian garb. But there's one thing you don't know, and that is a great recipe called pollo a la brasa, which is Peruvian roast chicken, is the best chicken recipe in the world. It has a spice rub with chilies, with mint, with lime juice. It's fabulous. So let's go into the kitchen with Bridget and figure out how to make a great version of Peruvian roast chicken. We have a little email from Kim. I think you'll appreciate this.
Okay.
In order to emphasize his message, Christopher Kimball waves his arms so frantically that he resembles some huge waterfowl attempting to take off. I don't want him flying into my living room. How about that?
It's America's Test Kitchen.
You can tell I'm Italian, right? So anyway, thank you, Kim. Yeah, there you go.
And we love you anyway.
Yes, all right.
All right, but back down on Earth, we're going to make the best chicken, Peruvian-style chicken. Tons of flavors in here, lots of spice, lots of heat, lots of sweet, a little bit of smoke. But we come across a few obstacles when we wanted to translate this dish back in America's Test Kitchen. One thing, we couldn't find the black mint paste, but we like the idea of using a paste on the chicken. It sticks to the chicken, it flavors the chicken. So we're gonna make our own spice paste. So we're gonna use the blender to do that. 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil and a whole load of garlic. This is 6 cloves of garlic. We've chopped them up. I've got 2 tablespoons of kosher salt, a tablespoon of ground black pepper, and a tablespoon of ground cumin. And a tablespoon of sugar. Now, sugar is an interesting ingredient. It actually balances out a lot of the heat, but also enhances a lot of these flavors too. Now, I've got 2 teaspoons of smoked paprika. Now, this particular dish is often cooked over a wood-fired rotisserie, so you get a little bit of smoke. So the smoked paprika is really gonna go a long way to give us some of that flavor. So this is a 1/4 cup, just mint leaves, goes right in there. Now, to kind of give it more of that woodsy flavor of the black mint, you want to use 2 teaspoons of dried oregano. Now we're going to give a little bit of acidity to this dish. So it's a 1/4 cup fresh lime juice, and because we want more lime flavor without all the acidity, I've got 2 teaspoons of grated lime zest. And now, for the star of the show, 1 habanero chili.
Oh, great.
Yeah, bye.
I'm out of here.
Well, of course, we couldn't find the ají chilies. There is a specific yellow chili that they use down there. They actually have quite a bit of heat.
I can't believe you don't have your gloves on. I use ski gloves when you get to this.
Welder's
This
mitts.
is hot.
This is hot. It's a really good idea to use gloves with it, especially if you wear contact lenses. You don't want to think about that later on. But I'm going to wash my hands really well, and I'll use a little bit of milk to really get out some of that heat as well. So we just need basically a teaspoon of this.
I have an idea here. We'll just wave it over this.
No, yeah,
That's
exactly.
enough for me. We're done.
incredible amount of heat, and we only need a teaspoon. So probably this should do it. And I'm going to mince this up. So I want to get in there and get rid of any of the ribs.
We should just say habaneros are at the very top of the Scoville scale. So 200,000 means you can taste 1 part in 200,000 of extract of capsaicin from that habanero.
Wow. All right, 1 teaspoon is all we're using. And it goes. Let's put the lid on. We're going to process this up until a paste forms. That should only take about 5-10 seconds. All right, that ought to do it.
I think my eyes are watering and the top's still on. I'm serious.
So I'm just going to scrape this into a little bowl, and we're going to use it immediately. Now, you probably want to put this as far away from you as possible.
Well, I thought you were going to say I can lick the bowl.
Yeah,
no, I
exactly.
don't think so.
All right, so here's chicken. 3.5 to 4 pounds is what we're using here. And you notice that I used 2 tablespoons of kosher salt in here. Salt is a great way to work the flavor into the meat itself, and it takes time to do that. You see these little tendons here, you just want to break them. And then you can easily work your hand underneath. I'm just making space to put the paste. Just want to be ginger about this. You don't want to break the skin. And I also want to work and loosen the skin right here on the thigh as well, because we're going to get some of that paste right in there. And if I see any big pockets of fat, you can also take those out and remove them. Looks good. Start working it in there. All right, so half on the inside. Smear the other half on the outside.
How are your hands feeling? Good?
No, actually, it doesn't hurt at all. If you're the least bit worried about this, put some gloves on. Just going to tuck these wings, because later on that means that we can just pop it right in the oven. Don't have to do any prep later on. That'll also prevent the wings from burning once we start to roast this. There's a plastic bag over there. Open wide, and in we go. Now I'm going to put this in the fridge. Minimum of 6 hours is absolutely necessary, but it's even better if we leave it in there overnight.
And now it's time to check in with our gadget guru, Lisa McManus.
Well, Chris, there are a lot of devices out there that promise to help you roast a better chicken. A few years ago, we tested these vertical roasters, and we liked them, but then All-Clad came out with what they called their ultimate chicken roaster. It costs $180 as a roasting pan with this detachable arm. You put your chicken on there, you're supposed to be able to put your vegetables underneath and roast it all at once. Kind of works like the vertical roasters. It's kind of a horizontal roaster. We thought of it as the $180 beer can chicken. We gave it a try. The results were less than stellar. Anything bigger than a 4-pound chicken just droops and drapes over the vegetables. Everything steams, the chicken doesn't brown. You can see the skin is not really that nice golden crisp that we like. The vegetables are not getting their nice color. They're drowning in the juices. It's kind of a mess. For $180, is this worth it? We don't think so. Which brings us back to those vertical roasters. Our favorite is the Norpro vertical roaster. It sits the chicken up nice and tall so it really crisps all over and cooks the skin and the dark and light meat evenly. It's beautiful. Has a little catch basin for some pan sauce. You can put it right in your roasting pan, surround it with vegetables, achieve the same thing as you could with this, with much better results. And for $28, we think it's worth it.
All right, so our chicken is fully seasoned. Now we're ready to roast it. And generally, when we're roasting chickens, we would use a V-rack, something like this. But when you're using one of these, you need to flip the chicken a few times to make sure that it's cooking evenly. Now this, it's quite slippery. It was just hard to handle. So instead, we're going to use a vertical roaster. This is a great thing. The chicken's going to sit upright on it. We're not going to need to flip it millions of times. We're going to put this in a pretty moderately heated oven, 325 degrees, and that is for a very good reason. We don't want to dry out the breast meat. So we're going to let it stay in there for about 45 to 55 minutes until the breast internal temperature registers about 140 degrees. And it'll start to look a little light golden. Now after that, I'm going to return the oven up to 500 degrees. So now that my oven is all the way up to 500 degrees, I'm putting the chicken back in. And we've raised the oven temperature so that the skin can get super crisp and rendered. Now, this particular vertical roaster has a great drip pan on it, but some of them do not. So a good idea is to pour in 1 cup of water right into the bottom of the pan. So with the water in the bottom of the pan, we can avoid the fat from dripping down, hitting that hot pan, and filling our kitchen with smoke. All right, so it's time to get the chicken. Now, it's been in that 500 degree oven for about 20 minutes, and I did rotate that pan front to back halfway through.
Okay.
Oh, that looks
Ooh,
so
that does look
good. Now we're gonna let that rest for about 20 minutes. What we're gonna make to go with this is a particular sauce that's often served, especially with these types of meat. So we're gonna start off with egg, and we're not gonna cook these eggs, just a raw egg. I've got 2 tablespoons of water to help with the consistency of the sauce, tablespoon of minced onion, along with a tablespoon of fresh lime juice, and tablespoon of fresh cilantro. Now I've got 1 minced garlic clove here, 1 teaspoon of yellow mustard, half a teaspoon of kosher salt. Now, that habanero that we used earlier, you remember that?
Oh, I do.
We're also going to introduce some of the chili flavor right here with pickled jalapenos. They have a really lovely, lightly spicy, but nice briny flavor here. And we need about a tablespoon. I'm going to chop all this up until it's uniformly chopped. That should take about 5 seconds. I've got a cup of vegetable oil, nice neutral flavored oil. It's not going to compete with the flavors in there. All right, so that should do it. Oh, look how juicy that meat is.
This smelled great when you made it, I have to say.
Oh, wait till you taste this. Now don't forget, a little bit of spice in there.
It has nice moderate heat level.
It's not overwhelming at all.
Oh, this is delicious. So great Peruvian roast chicken starts with a paste, but the secret to the paste was 2 tablespoons of kosher salt. We use mint, lime juice, zest, and habanero to get the flavor right inside. In the fridge, probably best overnight. Vertical roaster, 325, 45 minutes. Finished in a hot oven and made this sort of quick mayonnaise with a little bit of extra spice, including a pickled jalapeno. So there you have it. For America's Test Kitchen, Your Kitchen, a fabulous recipe for Peruvian roast chicken. I think you can actually OD on brown rice, because I did one summer in 1970. I ate nothing but brown rice for 3 months, traveling around the country in a 61 VW with a sunroof. Since those days, I gather that brown rice is actually a bit better. So it's time for a reawakening for me for brown rice and actually start to enjoy that gnarly, nutty grain again.
I don't know, is this going to be more fun than driving around in a VW?
No, it won't.
You can dig in when I tell you a little bit about brown rice. So we sampled 5 brands. We prepared them 2 ways. We did our oven-baked method. We actually find that one of the complaints about brown rice is, it scorches because of the long cooking time on the stovetop, and you can solve the problem by just basically putting everything in a covered casserole dish in the oven. So they're very simply prepared. It's water and a little bit of salt and brown rice. 5 brands, 4 of them we felt like were acceptable. 1 was really very unacceptable. 2 problems we noticed were spongy texture versus a chewy texture. The other thing is off flavors. So brown rice is the same as white rice in terms of it starts with the grain. It has a husk on the outside, and then it has bran, the endosperm, and the germ. For the brown rice, they take off the husk, which is inedible, but then leave the rest of the grain with all the nutrition intact. But they sometimes parboil the rice while it's still in its husk. And what that does, it'll shorten the cooking time. And so the brand that was parboiled cooked about 15 minutes less. But we found that you got a spongy texture, and that cooking activates enzymes, which also sort of gave it an off flavor. So I've been talking. You've been tasting. You noticing any differences? You having any flashbacks,
No, I'm
Chris?
having flashbacks. I mean, I can hear Jerry singing Friend of the Devil as I do this.
You noticing any differences in texture between them?
This is hard. Some, not huge. I would say this is the blandest of the lot.
Okay.
This is a little chewier and nuttier. I do like the flashback part of this, though. I think that's
I know. I think you're going to finish these bowls, Chris.
I think I'd say this was the worst of the lot. It seems, I'd pick that one.
You want to pull
the worst. This is probably Uncle Ben's or something, right? Yeah, of course. See, I knew it.
Yeah, you picked the loser, Chris.
Oh,
You picked the one that was parboiled.
I thought it was really chewy and tasted great.
Yeah.
Now here's the one I didn't like.
That was middle of the pack, Carolina. We thought it was bland.
It was
we
bland.
thought the texture was fine, but it was unremarkable. It was middle of the pack.
And this one, which
Is the winner by Goya. We felt like this had the best flavor, best texture, a little bit more of that toasted, nutty, earthy notes. Not sure you picked those up.
I guess I picked the loser, which does happen occasionally. That's why Jack is smiling. I picked the Uncle Ben's, but everyone else thought that Goya actually was nuttier and had the best texture. Here in Boston, we know a great deal about baked beans. Cook them for 6 or 7 hours. Start with salt, pork, a little mustard, molasses, of course, a hint of vinegar. We are the experts. That's why they call it Beantown. But when it comes to black beans and rice, hey, that's south of the border. What do we know? And this is what we get. Peas porridge hot. It's mush. It's cooked all day. So let's go into the test kitchen with Yvonne and figure out how to make a great version of Cuban-style black beans and rice. We get lots of emails from our readers, and this turns out to be an email that shows that America's Test Kitchen, the television show, has become ubiquitous in the culture. And he writes, I was just watching the news and saw contraband seized in a drug bust. It included America's Test Kitchen's highest rated kitchen scale. See, there you go. And all sorts of folks are taking our advice and using them for precise measurement. So now we're going to do something a lot more interesting than that, I think, maybe not as profitable. Black beans and rice.
Yes, this is a great dish where you take simple, inexpensive ingredients and you turn it into a terrific one-pot meal. And our goal for this dish was to get as much Latin flavor in it as possible and to make a foolproof way of cooking the rice and beans together. And I have 1 cup of dried black beans. I brined them yesterday in 2 quarts of water and 1.5 tablespoons of salt. And then I'm just going to give them a good rinse to wash off that brine and also check for any stones. So now we're going to put these in the pot. We're going to start by cooking the beans. The beans take a little bit longer than rice to cook, so we want to give them a head start. To the beans, I'm going to add 2 cups of water and then 2 cups of low sodium chicken broth for added flavor. This dish is all about getting as much flavor in there as possible. And 1 teaspoon of salt. So what I have here are the 3 main ingredients: green bell pepper, onion, and garlic. It's also known as the Holy Trinity. And we wanted to get all of this in the dish, but to cut it up and saute it, it just kind of weighed the dish down, it weighed the rice down because it had a lot of moisture. And we found the best way to get a lot of this flavor in the dish without overwhelming it was to infuse some of this flavor in with the beans as we cook it. So I'm gonna add half of a pepper. I'm gonna add half of a large onion, stick that right in. And then this whole head of garlic is going to go in there, but I'm going to remove 5 cloves first. Just going to cut this in half to expose the garlic to get the flavor out. I'm going to set that right in. And then 2 bay leaves, another Latin element. So I have this over medium-high heat. I'm going to bring it up to a simmer, cover it, reduce it to low, and cook it until the beans have just turned soft, and that's going to take about 30 to 40 minutes.
Yvonne said something at the beginning of the show about brining the beans, the salt and the water. And actually, that's the key to getting beans cooked properly. Most of the time, by the time the outside, the skins of beans get soft enough, the inside is overcooked. So we wanted to speed up the cooking of the skins, slow down the cooking of the interior of the bean. What do? Salt has a sodium ion, and the skin of beans contain 2 ions that are important, calcium and magnesium. They bond together, and until that bond's broken, the skins won't start to soften. The sodium ions go in, replace some of the calcium, magnesium. Those bonds break down much more quickly. Part 2, salt gets into the center of the bean and slows down the process by which the starch granules absorb liquid, grow, gelatinize, and become soft. So it slows down the cooking of the interior, speeds up the cooking of the skins, and you get perfectly cooked beans.
So Chris, it's been about 35 minutes. So now we're going to take out the aromatics because they've already given up a lot of their flavor. Okay, so now we need to drain the beans. And one of the unique things about this dish is that we're going to actually reserve the bean cooking liquid. Later on, the rice gets cooked in all of that really flavorful dark liquid. So after you drain the beans, you're going to need to reserve 2.5 cups of the liquid.
Okay.
Now these are the vegetables that are going to go into the dish. And then I just need to cut them into large 2-inch chunks before they go in the processor. And we're going to process it just till it's 1/4-inch pieces. Okay, this looks good. The pieces are in tiny 1/4-inch pieces, and you don't want to puree it too far because then when you cook it, you're going to wind up having to add a lot more oil than you need. And now we have the rice, and this is 1.5 cups of long grain rice. And I want to rinse this first. This will help to keep the rice in the dish nice and fluffy. And it's especially important in this dish because we're going to be cooking this rice in that reserved bean cooking liquid, and that has a lot of starch in it already. Okay, the water looks clear. Give it a good shake just to get rid of all the excess water.
Okay.
Now we can go back to cooking. So I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of olive oil to the pot. And then I have 6 ounces of lean salt pork, and this is another really traditional Latin ingredient. We wanna cook this salt pork until the fat renders out and it gets golden and nice and crispy. And that's gonna take about 15 to 20 minutes.
Some of you may wonder what salt pork is and where it comes from. Well, it's the salted fat of a pig, but 100 years ago, salt pork was something very different. If you had a 250-pound pig and you slaughtered it, you had 160 or 70 pounds of meat, you had to do something with it. So either you ate it right away, you barbecued it, or maybe you brined it and smoked it like a ham or bacon. You still had a lot of meat left over. So what they did was salt it and put it in a barrel, and you kept that barrel down the root cellar all winter, and that was called salt pork. If you were wealthy, you got clear pork, that's what they called it. It was the sides of the pig. If you were poor, you got the heads and the feet and all sorts of miscellaneous parts in the barrel. But it turns out the salt pork was a universal flavoring, almost like salt, pepper, and then salt pork. Boston baked beans, for example, contained almost as much meat, salt pork, as beans. Over time, by the Second World War, because of refrigeration, salt pork in a barrel was phased out. So salt pork today is the salted fat back from the back or from the belly, which used to be only part of the barrel. Today, that's all that's left, and today we still use it as a flavoring.
So it's been about 15 minutes, and you can see that the salt pork has really rendered down and become crispy. So now it's time to add the aromatics. I'm also going to add a tablespoon of olive oil to this mixture, and then 1 tablespoon of minced fresh oregano, and I have 4 teaspoons of ground cumin. So now I'm going to increase the heat to medium, and then I'm just going to saute this until the aromatics soften and begin to caramelize and turn golden. So this has been cooking for about 15 minutes, and you can see it's cooked down, the vegetables have softened, and it's just started to caramelize and turn golden. And I have those 5 cloves of garlic that I reserved before and I've minced. And I didn't want to add it before, of course, because garlic tends to burn easily, so I'm just going to add it and stir it around until it's fragrant. And this mixture is known as a sofrito in Latin cooking. It's the main flavor base of a Latin dish. So now I'm going to add the rice. I'm going to stir this just to coat the rice, and coating the rice with the oil and the vegetables helps to keep the grains of rice separate, which is a problem that we found in a lot of the recipes that we tested. A lot of the pots of beans and rice tended to have really mushy grains of rice that stuck together. So now we can add the rest of the ingredients, and I'm going to ask for those beans. You can dump that in the pot. Now I'm going to add the reserved 2½ cups of bean cooking liquid, and we're using just a little bit less than a 2-to-1 ratio of liquid to rice. And this is because of all the extra moisture that's in the pot from the sofrito and from the beans. We didn't need the exact 2-to-1 ratio. So now I have a ½ teaspoon of salt and 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, and this is going to add some brightness to the dish. I'm going to increase it to medium-high and bring it to a simmer. Looks like it's there already. One of the problems that we found in finishing this dish, we ran into scorched rice on the bottom and undercooked rice on the top time after time. And we found that the best way to cook this was to actually cook it in the oven, where the all-around heat of the oven is going to cook it evenly and consistently. So I'm going to cook this in a 350-degree oven just until the rice is tender, and that's going to take about 30 minutes.
Okay.
So when this came out of the oven, I stirred it up with a fork, and I let it sit for about 5 minutes just to let some of that steam escape to help keep the rice fluffy. So now we're ready to dig in.
You mean to eat?
To eat.
Oh. Lime.
Thank you. And a little bit of scallion.
Well, first of all, this actually looks nice and light and fluffy. It doesn't look heavy. I've actually had this dish, traditionally, and sometimes it is, even traditionally, it can be a little heavy. Yeah. The thing I noticed the most is there's a lot of flavor in it. Sometimes it's just rice and beans and there isn't much flavor at all. This is excellent.
And the vinegar really helps to brighten it up.
Can I have this recipe? This is a really good recipe.
Maybe.
So the secret to great black beans and rice started with brining the beans, which means they cook through evenly. The rice we rinsed and then sauteed with that sofrito. And then everything went into the oven to finish, which means it was cooked nice and evenly for perfect black beans and rice. So you can get this recipe. See, if I don't have to get it from you, I can go to the website. I can go to our website, americastestkitchentv.com, for the recipe today, all the recipes from this season, tastings, testings, and you can watch selected episodes of our show. And we also tweet, and we're also on Facebook. How modern of us.
I know.
This is excellent.
Thank you.
America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances.
And by Kohler, inspiring home chefs to create a professional-level kitchen with innovative sinks, faucets, and cook centers. Kohler.
And by Diamond Crystal Salt for the professional chef and those who want to cook like one. Diamond Crystal, the gourmet choice. By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. By Plum Amazins, diced dried plums from Sunsweet for amazing recipes. By Miracle Grow, the gardener's friend. And by Chateau Saint Michel.